You ever just play a game for the first time, and on the first level or mission, you get your shit kicked in so hard, but you still think to yourself, alright, I'm into this. Well, that's Risk of Rain 2, a third-person roguelike that's all about time management and staying on your toes. By now, there isn't much to say about the game's mechanics that hasn't been said already, so I want to spend more time injecting my own experiences to the review. So, let's get through the basic stuff first. Starting out, there's a timer constantly ticking up while playing, and the difficulty and enemy scaling ramps up with time. As of writing the script, there are 10 different playable characters, each with unique playstyles from each other. Items can be stacked endlessly, but not all of them are more useful with greater numbers of them. For instance, getting multiple ATG missiles only increases the damage, but doesn't increase the activation chance. On the other hand, getting multiple interstellar desk plant only increases the healing radius, not the healing amount or duration. But enough talking technical shit. I think the real meat of reviews for games like this come down to how you can describe certain experiences, since even though you're doing the same thing each run, each experience is completely different from the last. The game is genuinely fun, and I'd recommend it to anyone that's a fan of roguelikes. Difficulty scaling with time is a surprisingly unintrusive mechanic because it forces the player to think critically about how they're spending their time on stages. For example, do I want to spend 10 minutes farming enemies to buy all the chests on the stage, or do I want to spend 2 minutes on 3 chests, then get to the next stage? And every decision you make on that balloons until you either decide it's time to end your run, or until your poor choices come crashing down on you. Like, this one time, I was on stage 3, trying to camp out a chest or 2. The plan was to spend no more than 3 minutes waiting for the money. I get the money and realize, oh shit, I don't know where the teleporter is. And oh shit, man, I should've killed those enemies when there were only a few of them. I got dozens chasing me, and oh shit, I spent 10 minutes running around the stage, man. Where's the teleporter, man? Then I find the teleporter and proceed to get swamped by the boss, the new horde of enemies spawn, and the horde that was chasing me. But by some miracle, with a pinch of unadulterated skill, I made it out of the shitty situation I got. I felt like the king of the world and the destroyer of all. Then I got to the next stage and had to do it over again. But this time, I'm significantly weaker than them because I spent too much time looking for the fuck-ass teleporter. But again, I overcame those insurmountable odds, feeling like a complete badass, and move on to the next stage. I spawn in, and immediately I see 2 magma worms, and knew I had to get rid of them before I activated the teleporter, since they chased me all across the map. But in this game, getting something done isn't as easy as just focus on these enemies, because enemies don't stop spawning, so this fight is just a cat and mouse between me, the little guys, the not so little guys, and the 2 magma worms. I dodge, weave, kill, and collect items while whittling those things down, and eventually I kill them, along with other enemies on screen. And again, in those moments, I feel like nothing can stop me. I'm the executioner to all that oppose me. Nothing can stop me. I'm unstoppable. Then I get stuck between the ground and a group of enemies and die. It was then that I stopped playing and proceeded to write this script. Love this game. Love this game. Love this game. Love this game. I'm not playing another match of this. And guess what? The root of my problem stemmed from spending about a quarter of my runtime on the stage 3. It is indeed a fucking rough cycle. I need to sneeze. The item survivor combos are also surprisingly well balanced too. With over 90 different items, not counting equipment, and 10 playable characters, each with different playstyles, I'd imagine it'd be hard to make a majority of the items useful on all characters, but somehow they are, and they all synergize with each other. It's great, because it makes you feel like an unstoppable force, even though the items you get are random every time, but that makes it feel even better when you get the God Run. Take this run for example. I was playing Mercenary, a burst melee character. Although I don't have footage of the first few stages, I could tell that this run was gonna achieve God status. After I opened my first chest, out popped a legendary item that, while looking back on the footage, turned out to be the most useless of all the items I ended up having. Set up the stage, hype, and the bulge in my pants for this run. I became unstoppable. I ascended, so much so that I would eventually get one of the most broken items in the game, Ceremonial Daggers, an item which creates knives on the corpse of whatever you just killed. Those knives then seek out other enemies, and guess what? Dagger kills also make more daggers. By that time, I was basically death incarnate. I couldn't be stopped, but it gets better. I also ended up getting a Frost Relic, an item that creates a damage bubble around you when you kill an enemy, and it gets bigger if you get more kills within a time limit. And the icing on this cake was the Genesis Loop, an item that only sometimes drops from a specific boss that will create a high damage explosion around you when you're low on health. These items, combined with other useful items I had, gave me so much power I could vibe check God. Once I killed an enemy, I would get an AoE damage around me, plus the daggers, plus effects from other items, and if I ever got to low health, my Genesis Loop would deal enough damage to wipe out any small fry within my vicinity, creating more daggers, giving me a bigger AoE on Frost Relic, and giving me a barrier from another item, ensuring that unless I did absolutely nothing, I couldn't die. It got to the point where I decided I was too powerful, and ended the run by obliterating myself, going out in my own blaze of glory. And it was awesome. One of the last things that I want to really discuss are artifacts. Artifacts are unlockable game modifiers that modify the game. In order to unlock them, you need to activate the secret contraption on stage 5. There are 16 of them, but I only have 2 unlocked because those were the only 2 that I wanted to use. Artifact of Glass makes you do 500% more damage, but you only have 10% health. An Artifact of Command lets you choose the items that drop, but the rarity of the item is still random. My favorite one is definitely Command, so this last section is really all about that. Command is perfect because it makes everyone you do with it enabled a god run if you know what you're doing, and lets you play with the game's borderline broken item scaling. My favorite builds that aren't the brain-dead scumfuck tactic of Ceremonial Daggers plus Forgive Me Please are probably Blast Shower Jester of the Drowned plus Wedding Bands on Mercenary. Then, second to that, is the build that I just like to call the Great Crowbar Adventure. So let me explain this, starting with the first build. There are these 2 items called Kajaros and Reynald's Band. When you deal a lot of damage in one attack, each band has their own unique effect. One of them is a fire tornado, and the other is an ice explosion. These bands, although they're 2 different items, share the same cooldown. Interestingly enough, the cooldown for these items are considered a debuff, and hey, what do you know, there's an equipment that completely removes debuffs from you on use. Combine that with the Jester of the Drowned, which reduces the cooldown of equipment but automatically consumes them, and fuel cells that reduce equipment cooldown too, and you have the perfect recipe for explosions everywhere. The build can work on any character, but I specifically use it on Mercenary, because under the right condition, every attack in his kit will trigger the explosion so long as he lands his 3rd basic attack on them. The item combo is incredibly fun, and still requires you to be constantly on your toes, as you're mostly carried by the stopping power of the Wedding Bands, and it takes a few zones to get the desired cooldown on Blast Shower, but when it gets there, it fucking gets there. Look at Exhibit A. I put almost all of my effort into crit, the Wedding Bands, and attack speed, carefully dodging around enemy attacks in the early game, and in the late game, obliterating them before they even get the chance. And once I got enough fuel cells and Gestures of the Drowned, I went off. Elder Lemurian, poof, gone. Brass Contraption, more like ass contraption, got him. Imp Overlords can blink away from danger, but I can make them blink out of existence. Elites, more like shit. You may wonder why there are only parents in the second game, but no children enemies like the first game. Well, the truth is, I killed them all. Oh, boy, that was surprisingly dark. Look, more Wedding Bands, yeah. I ended up getting to the point that I had so much attack speed that all I needed to do was run around and hold left click to kill everything in sight. Jesus can walk on water, but can he kill a boss in 3 seconds only holding one button? I love this build so much. I truly have the power of God and anime on my side. Fuck! Now, The Great Crowbar Adventure is really just a general term that I use for characters that I'll just stack crowbars with. This build is specifically for characters that deal a significant amount of damage in either one attack or short bursts. High burst damage is important because crowbars will only deal bonus damage when the enemy is above 90% health. With that in mind, I usually only do this with Captain, as his shotgun is a pretty solid primary for this build, but I see the most success with Artificer because she has this bomb ability that'll typically kill anything it touches, so giving it more power is just a guarantee that it scales phenomenally into the late game. The goal of this build is to get as many crowbars as possible until you get to the point where you... Insert joke? Why the fuck? I wrote insert joke here and I never finished this part. Okay. I'm keeping that in. My most successful attempt with this was a run I did with Captain. I ended up getting a legendary item that fired homing skulls whenever I received healing. I also had a 100% crit chance and an item that healed me whenever I landed a crit. Eventually, I got far enough into the run where I got an item that fired homing fireballs as long as I was sprinting. So, eventually, I didn't even need to shoot anything myself. All I need to do is sprint around, and a torrent of missiles and other projectiles will come seeking out any poor soul unlucky enough to spawn near me. Like, this iteration of the Crowbar Adventure was so successful that no enemy could really do damage to me, and I was completely decimating everything that moved. I knew it was time to end the run, when I would find random scavenger bags on the floor without even knowing that they spawned in. For reference, scavengers are one of the highest health and one of the most lethal enemies in the game, so knowing that I killed them without even knowing of their presence made me realize that it was time for me to face the Big Cheese, the head honcho, the final boss of Risk of Rain 2. From here until... There will be spoilers for the final boss if you care about that. This is your only warning. Again, skip to the timestamp if you don't want this to be spoiled for you. But anyways, since I had already spent over 2 hours on this run, Mithrix, the final boss, was scaled up ridiculously high, and has so far been the only thing that didn't die in one burst of damage, but I was determined to end this run proper and kill the bastard. I got through the first 3 phases of the fight pretty easily. It wasn't until the final phase where he does the big suck where things get difficult, but I had my wits about me. I would overcome the adversity and prevail, because I totally won the fight after that. Anyways, enough talking about builds and shit. It's time for me to give my closing thoughts on the game. Risk 2 is a ridiculously fun game, with hundreds of hours of content, and endless replay value. It's one of those games that forces you to stay alert, and constantly manage that danger that is the timer. The game looks amazing, and is optimized surprisingly well. I could confidently say that I have never crashed while playing the game, and even with the ridiculous amount of shit that's flying at you and toward enemies at any given time. The closest I've gotten to bad performance was the frame rate going into single digits when I interacted with 3 things at once while having 16 fireworks on me. For people familiar with the game, they know what I'm talking about. But for the people that don't, watch. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to tune in next time for more game reviews. No, these are more like overviews. Yeah, game overviews. Alright, that's it. Bye.